I think as far as the young players go and the way they performed in the first game against the Blackhawks, it's exactly what you wanted to see. The real challenge now and the question now is, can they keep it up night in, night out? And that for every young player, it's the same. Can they consistently bring what they're bringing now through the course of a season when they're playing back-to-backs, when they're traveling? You know, they're going out to the West Coast next week. That's going to be a challenge as well. Can they play the same way through all that stuff?
Part of why I think Poitras's up here for good is he opens up so many options in the lineup. Because, coming into the season, I think we were all like, okay, Montgomery had said, even prior to the preseason, it's probably going to be Zacha Coyle down the middle. And then, we kind of all speculated probably Geeky is the third line center, and then it's a battle for the fourth line center spot.
Yep.
Now, with Poitras in the mix, my guess is in these next 8 games of Poitras's stint here, or sort of the trial test run, you'll see him in the top 6 at some point. I think he should get up into the top 6. I want to see him with Marchand and DeBrusk.
Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my stuff at joehaggerty.substack.com. If you join up for a premium membership, you can get all of my stuff sent to your inbox fully so you can read everything. If you don't join the premium membership, you only get a couple paragraphs, and it gets kind of frustrating after a while. So join. We get the premium membership, and you can read all of my thoughts and analysis on the Boston Bruins. Happy to have New England Hockey Journal's Evan Marinofsky with me today. Evan is going to jump on and answer some questions, talk about that first Bruins game that we saw this year. But first, I want to give a couple of quick shout-outs. Fanduel Sportsbook, as always, partner, sponsor. We love them. $200 in bonus bets right now guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. FanDuel.com/Boston. Get in on all of the NFL action and now the NHL action now that the NHL season has started. All the more reason to start spending some money over at Fanduel Sportsbook. And the other one we want to give love to, obviously, is Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Healthy meals ready in 2 minutes, chef prepared. My wife loves them, even when they're like Indian butter chicken, which I'm not sure I was going to like it before it came. It was delicious. I liked it. So get onto the Factor Meals bandwagon. But now, Evan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. And just quickly, let me know right out of the gate what you thought about that first game against the Blackhawks. Initial knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, and my knee-jerk reaction was, I think it's sort of what we expected, right? Montgomery put it best after the game. Played average. I didn't think it was their best performance. Obviously, it was their first.
Very average.
Very average. It's true. He did say
very
how average
they were. Yes.
Is it possible to be very average? Isn't average just average at some level? But I was my knee-jerk reaction was the bottom 6 looked real good. Top 6 was okay to start. Didn't notice them as much as the game went on. And defense and goaltending sort of won you that game, which is what I expect to see more out of them this year. So nothing. I mean, we'll get into Poitras was a bright spot. I thought Lauko was outstanding.
Yep.
But I wasn't blown away. Also, the Blackhawks are the Blackhawks. I mean, outside of Bedard, that is a barren roster. There is not much going on there.
I mean, they got a couple guys. Like Seth Jones is a good defenseman. Bedard obviously brings a lot. I've always liked Athanasiou. They've got some young defensemen that I think are up and coming. So they're not last year's Blackhawks, but to your point, they're not. I don't even know if they're going to be a playoff. Bedard's going to have to be pretty outstanding every single night, I think, for them to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I don't have them as a playoff team. I think they're still far away. I think in net, I'm not a huge fan of what what they have there. Again, they're rebuilding, so you can't expect anything crazy. I agree. Seth Jones just paid a lot, and I think that sort of clouded my judgment on him. Is just he's paid so much. Looked like he was going to be a elite defender in the league. He's solid, but obviously not. I don't think worth the money that they ended up giving him. But yeah, I mean, I have Bedard somewhere around 70 to 80 points in his first year. I think he's their main guy. First power play, #1 center. Like, they have thrust him in this role, and through the 2 games they've played at the time of recording, like he He does it all, and
Yeah.
he's so smart, and he always has the puck on his stick.
He's generating a lot of offense. He's getting a lot of shots on net, making a lot of things happen. Like, he looks like he's the real deal. The question is, is he going to be like the other guys that kind of face of the NHL franchise, where they didn't really get a lot of peaks and valleys in that first year, like Sidney Crosby, McDavid. Those guys were all pretty strong. McDavid maybe a little bit physically had a little bit of a hard time that first year, but for the most part, those guys
didn't he get injured? He got injured his first year.
He did. So for the most part, those guys have been studs right out of the gate, and it'll be interesting to see if Connor Bedard is that exact kind of guy too. But to your point, there's definitely a few things we'll go through with that 3-1 win. Very solid. Milan Lucic was one of the ones that I noticed right off the gate. And the fourth line, to your point, Jacob Lauko I thought was outstanding. I agreed too. I think that whole fourth line was really good. I thought Johnny Beecher was excellent. Lauko was excellent. Milan Lucic was really good. They got the first starting nod from Jim Montgomery. They got that first shift of the game. They almost scored, and they brought energy right away. And, Lucic is obviously not going to be the fastest skater out there. I think there's going to be times where it looks like he's sort of lagging behind the action or playing catch up a little bit. But he's a very underrated passer. He's a very underrated guy as far as setting things up offensively when he gets in the right spot. It was a great pass that he made to Pasternak that Pasternak scored on, hit him at the perfect place in transition, allowed him to go in and shoot. And, it's kind of similar to the setup pass he had for Mason Lowry's goal in the preseason. Again, an extremely smart pass, a veteran move, whereas I think his hands and his vision are sometimes underrated, where he can make plays happen out there. But the physicality was there too. I think he brought a little bit of that. Obviously, it was a great moment in introductions when he got an extended ovation and got a kind of emotional and was, pounding his heart, just basically saying, showing them back the love, the fans. All that was great.
One thing, though, I want to touch on Lucic. You mentioned the vision, and it's interesting because the two plays you mentioned, Lowry's goal in the preseason and Pasternak's goal in the first game on Wednesday night, come off the rush.
Yep.
Like, that requires, at least being able to handle the speed, which he was able to do in those situations. And just to add to that, you see the flashes of that former top six forward who, with his big body, he's able to protect the puck so well. When they're doing the cycle game and when they have it set up in the offensive zone, that he's able to keep it away from defenders and heads up, able to find a guy to pass it to. So I agree. I mean, his playmaking's terrific.
And Beecher and Patra, both I think strong in their debuts. Beecher looked like he belonged on the fourth line. The fourth line in general had a strong night. He had a couple of chances. He had that play where I threw a bad hit from behind a boarding penalty, and then he dropped the gloves and he fought Dickinson, who's a pretty tough kid, and held his own and played the energy game, which is exactly what's going to be required of him. It's what they want to see out of him. Kind of sort of getting rid of the airs of being a former first round pick and a U.S. National Development Program kid and a kid that went to Michigan and, a guy that instead of all that stuff on his resume is going to get his hands dirty when he has to and is going to play the energy game that they need and play the details game, killing penalties, winning faceoffs, all that stuff that he was doing in that first game. So he was impressive. And Patra, obviously, I thought was really good too. And continues to look like I think he's going to stick around. I'd be really surprised. And I think the Bruins are going to have to see something drastic here in the 9 games to decide not to keep him around because he's kind of, miraculously turned into this exact thing that they needed at the exact right time. Right when Bergeron and Krejci were retiring, they needed somebody to drop down from the heavens and be like that center of the future and that guy that they may even during the season be able to push up into the top 2 lines if he continues to show that he can handle things. But they needed somebody like that, and he has come out of nowhere and been that guy. So, I think as far as the young players go and the way they performed in the first game against the Blackhawks, it's exactly what you wanted to see. The real challenge now and the question now is, can they keep it up night in, night out? And that for every young player, it's the same. Can they consistently bring what they're bringing now through the course of a season when they're playing back-to-backs, when they're traveling? They're going out to the West Coast next week. That's going to be a challenge as well. Can they play the same way through all that stuff?
Part of why I think that part of why I think Patra's up here for good is he opens up so many options in the lineup. Because, coming into the season, I think we were all like, okay, Montgomery had said, even prior to the preseason, it's probably going to be Zacha Coyle down the middle. And then, we kind of all speculated probably Geeky is the third line center, and then it's a battle for the fourth line center spot.
Yep.
Now, I mean, with Patra in the mix, my guess is in these next 8 games of Patra's stint here, or sort of the trial test run, you'll see him in the top 6 at some point. I think he should get up into the top 6. I want to see him with Marchand and DeBrusk, or however you want to kind of finagle those lines. But then that allows you to put Coyle as the 3C and be a strong matchup dominator down there. It puts Geeky on the wing. Now, you could argue Geeky's a little slower than most. Maybe maybe he's better down the middle. You can try that out if you really want to, but again, it gives you that option of trying these guys around. You got Beecher on the fourth line there. And if you even wanted to kind of shake things up in the, if James Van Riemsdyk, let's say, doesn't fit these next couple games in the top 6, and, again, we're all kind of waiting to see if that's going to work out or not. You could always put a Coyle on the wing if you really wanted to. Yep. And again, because Patra allows you to do that. Without Patra in the equation, that doesn't really happen. So that's why I don't see, again, throughout the whole preseason, Haggs, all I kept saying was you send him back to the OHL. It's good that he's doing this, but he needs some more time. But over the course of the preseason games, his game of intelligence, high skill, good on the details.
Tenacity, too. Like, he wins battles. Yeah. He goes to the areas he needs to go to in the high danger area. And he also has some, elusiveness to him where he doesn't take big hits either, and he kind of can avoid those. He seems to have that thing, where he can go where he needs to go in the danger areas and not get squashed when he goes in there too often, which is, if you're his size and his age, you absolutely have to have that. So, that's important, and he's shown that.
And you have to have that because it's 82 games.
Right.
If you're getting walloped in game 11 of the season, you're not playing a full season. But to me, we've seen the preseason games. We've seen one game against the Blackhawks. So far, he's a pro. That's a pro center, and with top 6 upside. And I think, as you said, they needed a blessing. They needed something. And he seems to, at least right now, be sort of that thing.
Yeah, and the other part of that is, too, and part of the equation of, do you send him back to Gulf? And the OHL is he had 95 points in that league last year.
Yeah.
Playing for that team. He was pretty dominant last year. How much more is he going to develop if you're sending him back down there and he's just going to, toss up another 100 points? Yes, you could say maybe, he only, I think, had 16 goals for Gulf, so maybe he could have worked on his own, offense and scoring a little bit more, whatever. But if you're putting up 95 points in the O, at that point, you're getting pretty close to being ready for pro hockey. I don't know how much more he had to prove going back there. And in that respect, I think being here and the fact that he belongs here and he shows he can play here, it's going to be better for his development, and it's going to fast forward it more rather than send him to a place where he was just going to dominate again for another season. So
my thinking on sending him back was more so you couldn't send him to Providence. Because has there ever been a player more where Providence would have been the perfect fit for at the beginning of the preseason? When before games had been played, it was that's a guy who should be in Providence, can't be in Providence. And my whole thinking was, okay, you sort of have your guys at the NHL level. Let Zacha and Coyle be top 6 centers for a year, see how it goes. Patra will come in next year fully ready. Now, you also have to take into consideration, and you hit this, had a lot of points last year. You don't want him to get, not that he would get, because I don't think it's in his makeup to be like this, but bad habits start to form when you start to play inferior competition and things like that. So as the preseason went along and that last stretch of games 2 weeks ago took place, the back-to-back, and then the game in New York,
once
it was pretty clear.
Back, I think they were convinced. Once he looked good in the second night of a back-to-back and he showed some legs and he scored a goal in the third period, I think that was all they needed. I think that was a direct test to see if he could handle the NHL schedule, and he passed it. Once he did that, I think their minds were kind of all right, this kid's shown he belongs. We've thrown every roadblock in front of him, and he's just hopped over them. Patra looked good. Beecher looked good. Allmark, I thought, looked solid. And I was wondering about him and how he was going to respond and look coming off the playoffs last year. And, I thought he would probably end up looking like himself. And I think regular season, he's kind of got it figured out. And, I worry or am concerned or have questions still about the postseason, both with him and Swayman. But, I wanted to make sure he was going to look like the calm, cool, positional guy that was making all the stops he needed to make, that wasn't this frenetic, too much activity in the crease like he was in the playoffs, like taking himself out of plays and, creating bad goals because he was way too overreactive. Like he was right back to himself in that game against Chicago, which I took as a very good sign as well, because the goaltending is going to be so important to this team's success this year.
Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Yeah, goaltending and defense are the kind of the bedrock of this group. It's funny. I thought he was fine. There was one or two saves that, again, it's first game of the regular season with goalies. Yep. It's hard to judge off of that. I think, what did he get, one game in the preseason? I don't think he got that many. It's still early. There were a few that I was like, there was one off a rush. I forget who shot it from Chicago, but I think it might have been Bedard. It just kind of was kind of under Ullmark and he fell back on it. Okay, but I've been, I think he is obviously, no one's projecting him to be the exact same goalie he was last year when he won the Vezina and was the best regular season goalie that led the best regular season team ever. Yep. But, it would not shock me if Swayman sort of passed him this year.
Yeah,
again,
I've said that on the podcast. I think you and I are on the same page with that. I think that may happen.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a testament to Ullmark not being good. I think it's just sort of the way it works, the way Swayman's development is heading. And, again, there was, the stuff in the offseason with Ullmark and whether or not he'd be traded or this or that. And, you sort of wonder how that plays into his game this year. But, again, through one game, got them the win. Looked fairly solid doing it. Again, it's hard to judge goalies off their first couple games in the regular season because it's, it's not prime time for them. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
And just overall, I think they outshot Chicago 34-21, something like that. I just in general, I think they were outshot in every single preseason game, the Bruins. So I had a little bit of concern just about puck possession, the centers, the whole picture of what it was going to look like when the regular season started. But I also had the caveat of, guys like Marchand and Pasternak were clearly going through preseason motions during the preseason. And the guys that, knew they were going to be on the team were not going at full speed. So, just to see it all in action on Wednesday night, I liked what I saw. And I was encouraged by what I saw, that we're going to continue to see a team that's going to win, plenty of games, put themselves in a good playoff position, is not going to beat themselves, and is going to be able to, rely on the defense and goaltending and the occasional offense to win, even if, the power play I didn't think was great against Chicago. And the top two lines are still figuring it out. As they're sort of still figuring those things out, I think they're still going to be able to put themselves in a good position. So I was encouraged by that.
Well, God forbid David Pastrnak score that empty netter. I mean, that's uncool. You can't do that.
Hey, Marchand gave it up to him. Marchand could have tried and scored that one, but he wanted to set up his guy, get him another 60 this year. Why not?
I loved you and I always love to get into the Felger stuff. I loved that take of why is why is Pastrnak on the ice at the end of a game like that? It's is that really your take from game one? Is that really what the hill you're gonna die on?
Do I want the guy that's the dynamic game-breaking goal scorer to be on the ice when the net is empty to try to end the game right then and there? Yeah, and especially when he's a decent two-way player. I think I'm gonna do that.
Exactly.
Especially in this day and age. Bergeron's not here anymore. Krejci's not here anymore. Pastrnak is one of their best players. He's gonna be on the ice in those situations. You need to rewire your brain to think about it and be okay, he's one of the guys now. He's going to be in every situation.
Yeah, Patrice Bergeron not walking through that door. David Krejci not walking through that door. Contrary to the people in my Twitter replies, Haggs, being I think Krejci and Bergeron are coming back in January. And it's are they? That's terrific.
Well, when Bergeron talked to us the other night before the game on Wednesday, he basically admitted like his body clock is kind of telling him it's hockey time, and he's sort of going through that and adjusting to that. But he also said he knew it was going to come, and he's figuring it out, and he's just going to work his way through it as the season goes on. But it's just a natural, like that guy's been doing this his entire life, since
forever.
he was a kid. Like he's never known what it's like to like not be a hockey player at this time of year and to be getting ready for a hockey season. So it's like something totally foreign and different for him. Of course, he's going to, his body's going to feel that way, or he's going to start to have pangs like, I want to come back. But like, at the end of it all, he said the same thing. I'm at peace with my decision. I made the right decision. I think physically it was going to be really difficult for him to ramp up and be ready. And I think he just got to a point where it just, the amount of work he was going to have to put in and how difficult it was going to be on his body physically, and also worrying about like it was going to have lasting impacts on him, like after his career was over, like some of the injuries that he was playing through. I think all of that stuff played in along with being bigger part of his kids' lives, driving them to things. He's now coaching his son's hockey team. Like all the stuff that he's always wanted to do personally that he was just too busy to do when he was the captain of an NHL team, he's able to do now. And I don't think there's any way he's going to push that stuff aside and be like, oh, I'm going to jump on the Bruins train and play like at the end of the year and go into the playoffs. And David Krejci like was all smiles the other night. Seemed super happy, super at ease, super relaxed. He's talking about running half marathons with his wife down in South Carolina. He's golfing and like
he's competing with Chara on the marathons.
He said he wasn't going to do that. He was like, I'm curious at what my time would be in the half marathon. He's like, but I'm nowhere near Chara territory. He's going out and running crazy marathons. So like, but like those guys both, to me, they seemed happy when I was talking to them. Like they're okay with not being NHL players anymore. And like, I think fans need to wrap around it. I don't have it in front of me, the quote, but I actually talked to Lucic about this, and it was part of the Substack column I wrote today of the Bruins are turning the page on Bergeron and Krejci. Was Lucic was like, we've talked a lot in this preseason about the guys that aren't here and the players that aren't here anymore. It's time to focus on everybody that's in the room, the players that are here, and the players we're going out to battle with, like to start the season. And I thought it was the perfect time to say that. And it was absolutely right that the season opener with Krejci and Bergeron not there up in the stands cheering the team on and them going out and winning was the perfect time to turn the page on the past and those players that retired and focus on what we have now with the Boston Bruins moving forward for the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing is, like, I don't think this would have ever happened to Bergeron because I think obviously he has a good idea of his own body. But if he came back this year and it did take him a while to ramp up and he wasn't the same player, and it's like, when David Ortiz ended his career, perfect time, right?
Yep.
Like went out with like 40 home runs, perfect. Whereas you see a lot of guys, overextend their stay and they sort of start to fall off. And it would have been really bad to see that. Again, I don't think that would have happened to him.
No.
But, as he mentioned, having to sort of ramp up his body and stuff, and it would have been a little tougher. So, as you said, those guys seemed very at peace. Good for them. Incredible careers. Made the All-Centennial Team. I just watched that this afternoon.
Did you watch
the debates. I did. I watched the whole thing.
What did you think?
Well, I thought it was really uncool when you went over to Ty Anderson and slammed his head into his laptop. I thought that was over Brad Park. I thought that was really offensive.
I was like, stop trying to get Roy Conacher on the All-Centennial Team, you nerd.
Nerd, I thought that was great when they were like, does anyone have an argument for Roy Conacher? And Ty was like, yeah, when I see him up with those names, just maybe that wasn't the perfect fit.
No, what I told Ty afterwards, and I don't remember if I actually said it during the debate, if I said it afterwards, I appreciated he contributed the deep cut to the discussion.
Yeah, that was in there.
He went for one of the Bruins deep cuts and tried to throw him in there, and I appreciate it. I thought that was good.
That was good. No, it was great, though. And it's funny, like, it was a cool history lesson for me because I was not a part of the voting or anything, so I did not do the deep dives on some of the older generational players. I imagine for you it was really cool too, like just to go back and compare the eras. I was saying this to Connor and Poke the Bear, like and especially like in net, the goaltending discussion was the most interesting.
It was impossible.
Because it's impossible because you're comparing the Cheevers era with Brimsack's era and Tiny Thompson and Raskin Thomas and like
Tiny
all different
had
things.
4 Vezina trophies and he didn't make the All-Centennial Team. Like
I know,
crazy. Hall of Fame goalie
nuts
with 4 Vezinas and he didn't make it. Like, and that's why when I hear the people complaining about Thomas and Rask getting snubbed, I'm like, no, Tiny Thompson got snubbed. Like he was
Who
one
were
of
your
the
two initially.
Initially, I think I was going with who did I have? I had Tiny Thompson. I want to say Brimsek. I think I went totally old school with the two that I picked. Like I really wanted to get Tim Thomas in there because I still feel like that was the best season an NHL goalie has put up all time ever. That 2011 season, like he should have been the Hart Trophy winner that season. He was just on another planet. And when you look at the numbers, when you look at his performances that entire year, beginning to end, like I think that's the best season a goalie's ever put up in the history of the game. Like, so that deserves serious consideration, obviously. And he had 2 Vezina trophies, and he had a good career, even if it was truncated because he didn't get to the NHL until he was in his 30s. And by the end, it was he was kind of going from team to team a little bit. But I thought he definitely deserved consideration for the season he had. But like when you look at the body of work, I just don't think it's stacked up with the other guys. Brimsek and Cheevers both had 2 Stanley Cups, Hall of Fame careers. Like Cheevers individually wasn't as dominant as some of the other players, but I think he was kind of the Grant Fuhr sort of those Bruins teams that won the cup. Like statistically, he wasn't the best goalie out there, but like I don't know if you can totally value what he did on statistics. I think he was a great clutch goaltender, a winning goaltender when you need it to be, and there's something to be said for that. And Tuukka was kind of the opposite of Tim Thomas.
Yes,
where he had the career wins, he had the numbers. There's no question about it. But he didn't
longevity.
have the cup. He didn't have the cup. He wasn't able to. He got to 2 Stanley Cup Finals, and he wasn't able to help them get over the hump. Whereas Tim Thomas threw shutouts in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final and the Stanley Cup Final during 2011 when they won. Like he slammed the door and made sure they were not going to lose those games because he didn't allow a single goal in either one of those games. You can't say the same about Game 7s with Tuukka Rask when everything was on the line. So, I understand the argument people are making that like he had this great career and longevity and everything else. And I love Tuukka personally, but I just don't think you can look at guys that have Hall of Fame credentials, multiple Stanley Cups, multiple Vezinas, and say, no, I'm going to take Tuukka with 1 Vezina and 2 Stanley Cup final appearances over them,
Yeah, it's funny. When I first looked at the list on Thursday night when it came out, and I was like, oh, no Rask or Thomas. You'd think maybe one would make it, Rask with all the, franchise accolades and Thomas with that great run. But then you do dive deeper into it, and you look at Cheevers' impact and Brimsek's impact and Tiny Thompson's impact, and it's like, oh wow, like it's different, it's a huge discussion, and that's why it was so close because it came down to Tim Thomas and Jerry Cheevers for that last spot.
Yep.
So I can't pick 2 out of that. I can't. I think like when you really look at it, I think Brimsack was correct. I think again the Cheevers one is up for discussion. Do you value how much Orr had an impact on Cheevers and his good play and all those things? And, and like Thomas has a valid thing to be on there. Rask does. Thomas, the only thing against him, I think, is just I know obviously he came to the NHL late, but it just wasn't here super long. And I think, that's sort of the thing against him. And then Rask, if they win it in 19, like Rask is on the All-Centennial Team, right?
Yeah,
I would assume so.
If he had a cup, I think he would have made it. Yeah, if they had won in 2019, I think so. But that's like that when you define greatness or legends, like you have to win. You have to win.
Yeah.
Cup, to truly be a legend, to truly be great, and to be considered, especially side by side against players that have won multiple cups, you have to win at least one. We do have Factor Meals to help us out. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit when it does get busy, when it does get crazy, when we do need a quick meal. They fuel you up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Takes less than 2 minutes to cook them. They're fresh, never frozen, meals ready in 2 minutes, like I said. They have calorie-conscious options, going upscale with some of the things they're offering now, like surf and surf meal options, roasted garlic filet mignon, and shrimp and Cajun spiced shrimp and salmon, which is like right in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff I'm all about. So it's got everything for everybody. There's 34 plus chef-prepared, dietitian-approved weekly options for meals. You can get snacks, you can get breakfast items. Like it's a great deal. So if you want to get Factor meals, go to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use the code Haggs50 to get 50% off of your first box. It's a great deal. I've tried it. It's fantastic. I recommend it to you. We love these ready to make meal kits, especially when we're on the go with our kids. So one more time, that's factormeals.com/Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. You won't be sorry if you go to Factor Meals. It gets the Haggs thumbs up seal of approval.
When I was watching it, there were a lot of forwards in D that were put up there that had that were with the Bruins for, even 4, 5, 6 years, who had really good, strong seasons here. Like an Adam Oates was up for it.
Yeah.
And, it was, he wasn't here long enough. Whereas Thomas is different because Thomas won a cup and Thomas carried them to a cup, where it just means more. I mean, he was only here from 06 through, or 05 through 2012.
Yep.
That was his last year. So, really 6 or 7 seasons in there.
Yeah.
But again, the impact is forever because of that cup. And then someone made the point in the recording that, Krejci, Marchand, Bergeron, Chara are mainly on that All-Centennial team because of what Thomas did and what Thomas was able to do. I think Bergeron and Chara make it without question if there was no cup.
Yeah.
But the other two, I think it's closer if they don't have one.
Maybe, but like those Marchand and Bergeron, Marchand and Krejci are both top 10 Bruins all-time in scoring, goals, like everything. Like they've got the credentials too. So it's like, and I think it was Emily Benjamin was talking about recency bias when we were discussing the whole thing. And it's like, and we, what we said in the meeting, I'm sure it's in the video, is like, this is one of the golden eras of the Boston Bruins. Like, it's not a bias. It's like, this is one of the great eras. So you have to recognize all these players.
It's been almost 20 years
from these eras. Yeah. Where they're making the playoffs every year. They've been to the Stanley Cup finals multiple times. Like, a Centennial team is going to be filled with the players from the best eras where they won the cups and the teams that were, uber successful. And that's exactly what's going on with the group that's on there now. And I think every single player, the only one that I think there's any kind of a legitimate debate on is Pasternak being on there because it's just too soon. He's mid-career right now. And has he stacked up enough, to be on there instead of like going Cooney Weiland was one I know that was a strong consideration, an old-time player, that had a great career. Did he deserve it over a guy like that? That's a Hall of Famer, or that's one of the old-time best players of all time. And Lionel Hitchman was another one that was really difficult to keep off because he was a defenseman that has his number retired and is in the Hall of Fame too. So like, there was a few players like that I think those were the ones that honestly nobody's going to argue for them because they played like a zillion years ago, and like fans aren't as passionate about it right now. But like, if anybody's going to have a gripe about being bumped or, not being snubbed, it would be Lionel Hitchman and Cooney Weiland and those kind of guys. It wouldn't be the goaltending, which, I think no matter which way you go, you're going to have two great choices.
Yeah, I'm almost surprised they did. I get why they went 12-6-2, but you could have made an argument for 12-6-3,
right.
I guess.
It would have been
really
easy if you could have had a third goalie, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like, do you want to have a third goalie? But I'm happy with how it turned out. It was really compelling to watch, just from the perspective of kind of seeing how every decision was made. There were obviously ones that were not obvious. I was surprised Marchand went up for future consideration.
I was too. When I nominated him, I think it was Emily that said that.
Yes.
Matt Porter. And I was looking at both of them like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was surprised at that.
Consider this more. Like, he's a slam dunk just like Bergeron is.
Yeah, I Bergeron a little more. But yeah, Marchand is right there. And yeah, I was surprised that he was. And he went off the board quick, though. I mean, he was not on there for very long.
Yeah.
But yeah, heck of a performance by all of you.
Yeah, it was. It was fun. We had a really good time. Shout out to the Bruins for putting that together. I think everything that they've done with the Centennial has been great. And like, I'm not surprised. And I was saying this to somebody the other night. Like, they're an Original Six organization that gets it, and they do all the pomp and circumstance things and these kind of big milestone historic moments. They do them right, just like the Montreal Canadiens do. When you go up there for any kind of a ceremony, you know you're in for something special because they get out all the legends and everybody comes, and it's like they do it with a lot of class and dignity and you know the respect that it deserves, and it's pretty cool to be a part of it too, and to, you know, see the inner workings of it. But it was privileged and honored to be a part of that committee, and I thank the Bruins for including me and everybody else that was on it. All right, we're gonna get to a little mailbag. We're gonna zoom through this pretty quick, Evan.
All right, let's do it.
And some of these are things that we've already covered, so we can just breeze through them. Aldred224 says Brimsek over Thomas, Rask, or Thompson is kind of nuts. All right, I don't think so. Brimsek's a legend, so I don't think it's nuts at all.
Yeah, the more I think about Brimsek, the more he does deserve that number one.
It's a no-brainer. Come on.
Yeah.
Without Tim Thomas, they haven't won a cup since 1972. He should have been unanimous from Ryan J. 7800. Like, I would have loved to have seen Tim Thomas on there. You know, I would have loved to have seen it, but like I said, like I just don't think. When you compare him, he's not going to end up, I don't think, being in the Hall of Fame because his career wasn't long enough, you know, and he's right there because he's a great story and he's, you know, was a dominant goalie for 4 or 5 years, won 2 Vezinas, won the cup, but like, you know, you can't put him in over guys that are in the Hall of Fame, had great careers in their eras, and won multiple Vezinas and multiple cups and everything.
Multiple cups. Obviously, yes, we all value the 2011 Cup more than any other cup because it was the one, like, that's the only cup I've been alive for. It was special to me. It's a big deal for me. But there were more before, and I think you have to take those into consideration.
All right, and this is my favorite, this knucklehead right here. You've never even seen Tiny Thompson play, yet you would have had him on your All-Centennial team. Comments like this just make being named to the team a moot point anyway. And my response to this M Hands 9 doofus was, like, I didn't see Bobby Orr play alive. I was not alive to see Bobby Orr play. I was not old enough to remember Bobby Orr playing. Should I not vote him on the All-Centennial team or nominate him because I did not see him play? No. That's such a stupid point. I'm not even going to like address it anymore. But I wanted to include him in here just to kick him around a little bit. Dummy.
Yeah, I can't talk about anybody like pre-2000, 1999. I can't talk about anybody.
Yeah, you can't even talk about Cam Neely, right? Like,
nope, can't do it. Ray Bork can't do that either.
Do you really not remember Cam Neely? Did we use that before your time?
I mean, I was born in '99, so.
Holy crap, dude!
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, what do
you
you
are
want?
young, man.
I know. What do you want me to do? I don't remember Cam Neely playing at all. I've seen videos, obviously, but yeah, it's before my time.
It was quite a spectacle to behold, Evan. Let me tell you.
I mean, your kids were born like around 2011, so they're like, you're gonna be like, do you remember Tim Thomas? Your son will be like, who's that?
No,
they're like,
Tim
what?
was born 2013, like 2 months after they were in the Cup final against Blackhawks. So he has not been alive for a Stanley Cup win. You know, he's like
he can't talk. God forbid he ever talk about Rich Peverly, Chris Kelly, Mark Recchi. Can't talk about him. Talk about him.
I will tell you though, he's like I'm proud of him because he's developing like an appreciation for the history of the game. Like, I don't know how this happened. I don't know what happened to make this happen, but I am super grateful that it happened. Bobby Orr started following me on Twitter the other day.
Oh, geez.
Like, I was like, this is friggin' awesome. And the first thing I said to Finn was, guess who's following me now on Twitter and is going to see your hockey videos when I post them of you scoring goals? I'm like, Bobby friggin' Orr. And he was like, oh, my God. He was like psyched. He was like running around the house fist pumping. So thank you,
that's
Bobby.
very sick.
You made Finn's day. And I still am hoping, Bobby, someday that when I'm with you at one of these events, I can just call my dad on the phone, hand the phone over to you, and you can talk to him for like 5 minutes because you are his hero. So shout out Bobby Orr. Thanks for following me on Twitter. I appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Oh, unbelievable. Matt Lombo 24 says Thomas felt like an obvious consideration, but not here long enough. Rask, I'm surprised, wasn't in. Franchise leader in many categories, led them to 2 cup finals, both seasons with numbers similar to 2011 Thomas, but ring counting is always going to hang over him. That is exactly right, Matt Lombo 24. Great observation. Next, I wonder if TNT even knew this kid's name, talking about Matt Patra, because all that was said was Connor this, Connor that. I called his number 51 the minute I saw him on the ice. I knew he would be amazing. Congrats, Patra, from Maria Gonzalez on Facebook. And I heard multiple complaints about this on Twitter, that TNT was going gaga crazy over Connor Bedard and like not mentioning, like he whistled one over the crossbar on a shot from the high slot, didn't even hit the net, and they were just going nuts about how great he was.
Kenny Albert's legs went like little jiggly, he's like, whoa, what I love is, I saw an Instagram post today for Friday from Open Ice account, and it was like, the National Connor Bedard Tour, and it was every national game he had, and all the comments were like, I'm so sick of this. This is so stupid, all this stuff. And you feel bad because it's not the kid's fault. Like Bedard's not asking for any of this. That's why Marchand had the perfect response to it. He was like, I leave that kind of guy alone. So, yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't watch the TNT broadcast the other night.
I didn't
was
either.
there with you,
but
yeah, I didn't hear great things about it. I'm a TNT over ESPN guy. I think TNT does a phenomenal job.
I think they both do a great job, but I appreciate like the personality that Biz and the guys in the studio do with the TNT studio show. I think they do it right.
Yeah, I think TNT laps ESPN right now at least. So we'll see.
PK is bringing something though. I'm actually interested to see what PK has to say. So I think they've got like a budding star at ESPN too that's got some personality. And like I don't know if you saw this the other day, but Pat McAfee did like a segment on his show on the NHL.
I heard about this.
The NHL is awesome or whatever. It was like a 7-minute segment. Watch it. It was great. And like the more guys like Biz and PK and Pat McAfee that have personality, that can tell the game and make it fun and interesting, the better. Because I'm telling you right now, like Finn, my son, loves Biz. He loves watching TNT. He loves Biz's like love affair with the Maple Leafs and like all the stuff that he does that's fun in the studio. And that's what it's about. It's not about us and what we think. It's about like what the kids think and what they're entertained by and what's going to draw them and make them love hockey. And guys like Biz and Pat McAfee are all about it. So,
the other thing is, and I don't want to go on too far of a tangent with this, but like ESPN to me, they just have too much. They have so much. So a lot of their coverage of events is very uniform. It's the same desk, 3 people, person, 1 speaks, 2 speaks, 3 speaks. And it's just, they don't put it, there's not a lot of creativity in things because there's just too many things there. When I was at NCAA, I mean, they have like every sport. It's all covered the same. In my opinion, I'm not the be all end all. But I agree. It comes down to what the kids want, and personality drives everything.
It always does. Always does. You got to make it fun, and at any level, any sport. Lucic played a great role. Nobody went to the corners when his line was on the ice. He made many nice passes, and his skating was possibly the best part of his game. All right. I'm not going to go that far. I won't either. It was adequate. It was definitely where it needed to be, and I thought he's in very good shape in this camp, and it showed. Like, he's able to keep up. That's all you want to ask out of him.
Agreed.
He has a couple more years, possibly. He looked really good out there and can play on any line during the game. I would think line 4 will open many games. The Bruiser Costa on Facebook. Yeah, I think Jim Montgomery likes to open the games with the 4th line and start them energy line a lot. Like, I personally really like the way Jim Montgomery coaches because he involves everybody. He's like the prototypical hockey coach that makes sure everybody's involved. Doesn't want anybody to be a healthy scratch for too long, and make sure that they play.
Was that Bobby Orr?
No, that was actually John Zanis. I wish it was Bobby Orr. Make sure everybody plays and nobody sits up in the press box for too long. Make sure the 4th line feels like they're important and invested. Make sure the bottom pairing gets involved. Make sure guys play enough minutes where they don't feel like they're just sitting there as being grocery sticks, as Brad Marchand calls them on the bench when he trashed up guys that don't play. Like I love that Montgomery does that kind of stuff because I think it brings everybody together and it creates that team environment that you're always looking for. On any hockey team, and I think he does that in an incredibly good way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good. 4th line was solid. I'm curious to see what their usage is against your Hurricanes, your Maple Leafs, those teams, how they fare against them. I remember with Cassidy, that 4th line was sort of a shutdown line of the Corrali line. Can they shut down the other team's top line? I don't know if Beecher, Lauko, and Lucic are going to do that. They might, I feel like they're more going to be an energy line, forecheck the hell out of the team, put them through the glass, get some energy going, which is great. But I'm curious to see what they look like against better teams. That's my big thing with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they may get better defensively as the season goes on, too. They're young players. Like Beecher, I think, and Lauko both have the tools to be very good defensive forwards. So I think that's something they could grow into. I know talking to Lauko, he really wants to get more involved on the PK this year and get more minutes penalty killing. And I think his grit, his speed, and the tenaciousness that he plays with, and his ability to every once in a while pop a shorthanded goal and be a threat offensively could make him a very, very good penalty killer. So that could help him generate more in that direction too.
Agreed.
That'll be interesting. a work in progress. Maybe this year it'll be the other way around where they get a wild card instead of being the President's Trophy winner and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals from Stephen Gilman. And maybe, you know what? And look at the Florida Panthers last year, right? They were the President's Trophy the year before. Last year they barely got in as the wild card, the last seed, and then they make it all the way to the finals because they were good and healthy at the right time of the year. I don't foresee that for the Boston Bruins. I don't see them going that far. I think, they're going to make the playoffs as a wild card and maybe like a 1-round, 2-round thing just this year as they transition. But obviously anybody would love to see a long run from a team that they're covering.
Yeah, I have them third place in the Atlantic, out in the first round. That's what I've got. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope they go deep. I hope it's great content for us. Makes our lives easier. But you know what? I think even if they're out in the first round, with the development of Patra, potentially Lowry, Beecher, they're headed in the right direction.
Yep.
So I don't think that's a bad thing.
100% agree. All right, we're going to end with this one, Evan. Hold on. Proud and honored to know and have skated some with him. Tim Thomas is a good man. He came out of our area. This must be somebody from Michigan, from Flint. The summer pickup games, the travel program, and the high school program in this area. I taught a beginner skater program for adults at our local rink, and during summers, he would often skate on the ice just after my class finished. Now, he's out on the ice alone, skating and moving, doing the things he felt he needed to do to prepare for the upcoming training camps and tryouts and the like. And my student skaters would stand there in awe of how good that guy on the ice could skate and move wearing all that goalie gear. And they'd ask me, who is that guy? And I'd tell them his name, and if they knew his name, well, you could see it on their faces. All of us here send our support to him and his family because he is still part of our hockey family. And that's from Michael Crane on Facebook. That's a cool little snapshot into who Tim Thomas is. And it was great to see him come back to the Garden. It's great to see him get an ovation that he desperately or sorely needed, like he deserved, before the game started. I think he had earned that ovation a long time ago, and it was nice to be able to see him get that. So there's a million stories about him like that, just overcoming the odds and, being a guy that was working himself to exhaustion to try to make it and hang on to it once he did get there. And he did it. And it was cool to see him kind of say that, he's a day-to-day guy and he doesn't think about the stuff that he's accomplished, but weeks like this where they do the Centennial kind of reminds him of how great he was and the things that he accomplished and the great things that he did on the ice. So, that's what this Centennial stuff is all about.
It's so cool, the amount, you and a lot of the other writers, who covered that 2011 era team. It's so cool, the amount of cool personalities. Oh, yeah. Big stories that came out of that. Thomas, Lucic, Recchi, Marchand kind of coming into his own. It's just, there's so many stories I hear from you guys and stuff, and Thomas is always one of the top ones. So it's really cool to hear that, and that's a cool way to end. I like that. That's an awesome story.
Yes, and in addition to that, we're also going to end with thank you, Fanduel Sportsbook.
Yes.
Our sponsor right now, customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Spreads, player props, over-unders, so much more. And obviously, continue to bet on the Patriots to lose. I think that's the sure bet right now. But now that hockey season is here, you got to dip your toes into the hockey betting too. Get it going at Fanduel Sportsbook. Go to fanduel.com/Boston and kick it off right now that the NHL season is here. Maybe you can do a prop bet on how many times TNT is going to mention Connor Bedard in a game that he plays.
Ooh, that'd be an awesome prop bet.
You like that one? And let's also thank Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Meals ready in 2 minutes, healthy, chef-made, really delicious stuff. I've gotten a bunch of them for lunch, and you just pop them in, and your lunch is ready in 2 minutes. They're great to have when you have kids that you're driving all over the place or going to pick them up at school. So in this busy fall season that we're in, go to factormeals.com and order up some meals. Evan Marinofsky, thank you very much for joining me this week, my friend.
Of course. Always a pleasure.
All right. We're going to do this again a couple times next week. We're now up to 2 Pucks with Haggs episodes a week on the podcast, starting now that the season's gotten going. So double the pleasure, double the fun, double the Pucks with Haggs. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you at the rink.